The cool, austere air of the Jedi Council chambers never seemed colder than on that fateful day. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, the hero with no fear, stood before the 12 Masters, a knot of anticipation and pride tightening in his chest. He had been called to receive a singular honor, a seat on the Jedi Council. This was it, he thought, the recognition, the validation of all his sacrifices, all his triumphs. But then the words came, delivered with a calm gravity that belied their devastating impact. They granted him the seat, yes, but not the rank of master. The air seemed to leave his lungs. It was an unprecedented move, a deliberate slight. His promotion was tied to his role as the Chancellor's representative, a spy in all but name, an unwelcome political pawn, and certainly not an acknowledgement of his spiritual or even martial growth. The sting was immediate, sharp, and deeply personal. It wasn't just a denial, it felt like a deliberate humiliation, a constant reminder that, despite all he had given, they still didn't trust him, still saw him as too young, too impulsive, too dangerous perhaps, to wield the full authority of a master. The anger was a physical sensation, a burning wave that threatened to consume him. He had faced down armies, defied death, saved countless lives. Yet he was still held back, perceived as incomplete. How could they ask him to serve at the highest level, to bear such a responsibility, without granting him the full respect and power that came with it? His voice, when it came, was tight, strained with disbelief and indignation. He confronted them, not with a roar, but with a simmering intensity that betrayed his true feelings. How could he be on the council and not be a master? It made no sense. It was an insult. It was Mace Windu, his face a study in stoic resolve, who met Anakin's gaze directly. Windu's voice was, as ever, firm and unyielding, cutting through the emotional turbulence like a laser. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. He simply stated the council's decision as an immutable fact, a clear boundary drawn. There was no room for debate, no space for compromise. Windu's words were a stark reminder of the council's authority, a cold shower to Anakin's fiery rage. He was put firmly in his place, his personal slight dismissed as irrelevant in the face of the council's collective wisdom and the grave matters at hand. Anakin, for all his power, was still just a knight in their eyes and would be treated as such. The humiliation was complete, leaving a bitter residue of resentment that would fester and grow. But what Anakin, in his pain and fury, couldn't fully grasp at that moment was the immense, suffocating weight of the burden that pressed upon the Jedi Council. For months, perhaps even years, a creeping dread had settled over them. Chancellor Palpatine, once a beacon of hope and strength in a time of galactic crisis, had slowly, almost imperceptibly, transformed into something else entirely. His emergency powers, granted in a moment of desperate need, had not been relinquished. In fact, they had only expanded, consolidating his authority in ways that chipped away at the very foundations of the Republic. The Council, meeting in hushed towns, often late into the Coruscant night, had become deeply, terribly doubtful. They observed Palpatine's machinations, his quiet manipulation of the Senate, the subtle shifts in galactic policy that always seemed to empower him further. They saw the endless war, a convenient excuse for his continued reign, draining the Republic's resources and the Jedi's strength. The pieces were beginning to align into a grim, horrifying picture. Palpatine, they concluded with growing certainty, would not surrender his power. He could not be reasoned with, nor could he be waited out. He was, in their estimation, holding the Republic hostage. The discussions grew more desperate, more radical. The Jedi had always been peacekeepers, guardians of justice, never politicians, never usurpers. Their role was to advise, to protect, to serve. But now they found themselves staring into an abyss where the Republic itself teetered on the brink of absolute tyranny. It was Mace Windu, ever pragmatic and resolute, who voiced the unthinkable, a plan born of utter desperation. He agreed with a heavy heart that the Chancellor would have to be removed from office. This was a violation of everything the Jedi stood for, an act of defiance against the very democratic principles they were sworn to protect. It was a coup, plain and simple, dressed in the garments of necessity. But the plan went even further, revealing the true depth of their fear and their radical commitment. To maintain peace, to prevent chaos from engulfing the galaxy during the transitional period, Windu proposed that the Council would have to take temporarily control of the Senate. This was an unprecedented seizure of political power, a dark, grim necessity that illustrated just how dire the situation had become. The Jedi, the spiritual leaders, the peacekeepers, were contemplating becoming temporary dictators, all to save the Republic from itself, from the man who had woven himself into its very fabric. This grim and radical plan was not born of ambition, but of profound despair. It was a final, desperate measure, a horrifying sacrifice of their own principles in a desperate attempt to avoid a far worse fate. The Jedi Council, usually so measured, so devoted to the light, had been pushed to the edge, forced to contemplate actions that would forever tarnish their image, all in the faint hope of extinguishing the growing darkness that threatened to consume the galaxy. Their actions, though tragically flawed in their execution, were a testament to the terrible burden they carried, a reflection of a galaxy teetering on the precipice of its own destruction. This pivotal moment, where Anakin's personal anger clashed with the Council's existential dread, underscores the tragic path they were all on. The Jedi, in their desperation, were ready to compromise their core beliefs to save the Republic, perhaps not fully realizing the precipice they themselves were teetering on. What are your thoughts on this desperate move by the Jedi Council? Do you believe they were justified in contemplating such radical actions, or did their desperation ultimately blind them further? Share your perspectives in the comments below. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into the untold stories of the galaxy. Your support helps us continue these deep dives.